And Linda, it was just moments after that decision was announced by the Johannesburg Magistrates Court that bail had in fact been granted, that chaos broke out outside court, plenty of emotion, plenty of tears.
Well, certainly, Michelle, and quite expectedly so from the deceased's family. They were in court for a number of days. In fact, every day when Muhammad Mawela was appearing in court, they were there on the stands quietly listening to what is happening. Today, the lady, we're going to move, Michelle, while I speak to you, but talking about the mother of the deceased wasn't at court today, but the family, the uncles were all there, and they were quite disappointed with what has happened, which is, of course, the granting of the bail for a 19-year-old Muhammad Mawela. But what we are trying to do right now, just to explain, we are trying to go and get reaction from the National Prosecuting Authority. And given that there was a lot of commotion outside court, they have elected to give us reaction inside court because of safety reasons. But we will be making our way through. But quite certainly, Michelle, the commotion was caused by the fact that there was that ruling from in fact, the magistrate who said that Muhammad Mawela is not a flight risk and therefore will not be detained. In the interest of justice, they will be letting him out on bail. But what they said is that the Gauteng Department of Education must also intervene in terms of giving them bail. Michelle, we will be trying to move through these gates so that we are also at the forefront of receiving the news, particularly the reaction from the National Prosecuting Authority. But my colleague, I imagine those camera shots will be a bit shaky. We apologize for that, Michelle, as we make our way inside the court here to speak to the National Prosecuting Authority. And it seems that a lot of my colleagues are outside here. They will be trying to also get a sense of how the NPA, who did not oppose bail, will be responding to the commotion outside court. And it seems that everyone is ready, Michelle, but we are yet to speak to Sispindi right here, who's going to give us their sense of how they view all of this. Particularly, one concerning thing is the safety of Muhammad Mawela, since you see the community and some of the family members have reacted in quite a disappointed way from their side. But we are waiting, of course. I think my colleagues are waiting for me now. We are going to come closer. I don't see SABC, but we are going to come close and just try to get reaction from the National Prosecuting Authority, Sispindi. All right, Sisp, we are live on ENCA as well as other media. We are trying to get reaction from what had happened inside court. You saw there, but the decision by the magistrate to grant bail to Muhammad Mawela, you guys didn't oppose it. Are you still of the view that you weren't supposed to oppose it?
Indeed, yes. We did not oppose bail as the state. And that decision emanates from the facts that are at the state's disposal. With the facts that we had no reason to oppose bail. Hence, we did not oppose bail. And of importance to note is the fact that the family was consulted about this decision. We called in the family of the deceased, informed them that this is what is going to happen, and we leave it in the hands of the court to make the final decision. But we are going there not opposing bail. And further in that meeting, we also requested them to furnish us with a death certificate of the deceased. Reason being, we made them aware that the deceased in this matter was also facing a criminal charge of armed robbery in this same court and was supposed to appear in August. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, in August. And therefore we would need a death certificate so that charges can be formally withdrawn now that he is deceased.
All right, so you're saying that the suspect, the victim who has passed on, was also supposed to appear in court, was facing other charges, and that those of armed robbery?
Indeed, yes. It's the deceased and one of his friends who was stabbed in this case are actually facing criminal charges in the same court in August. So you'll understand that deciding on whether or not bail should be opposed, state had to consider a whole lot of facts. Like I said, the decision was purely based on facts that are beforehand, and therefore the state had to come to a conclusion that even now the magistrate has ruled that the deceased was part of there's allegations that the deceased was part of a gang, and as a state we don't have information to rebut such allegations, hence we did not oppose bail in this matter.
Well, just as a last question for myself, I'd like to speak about the safety of particularly your colleagues. You see, you yourself are doing an interview inside here because of safety concerns. We've seen last week the Westbury fight between alleged gang members. So all of those components, I guess, are playing into the fact that you guys are not feeling safe anymore. Is it something that you will be taking up with the Minister of Justice, because he was here as well last week trying to fix some of these problems?
Well, indeed, these are serious issues that needs to be attended to. We leave it in the hands of the leadership of the NPA, the leadership of the justice system, working together with the police, because these are issues that could have been avoided. If matters are not allowed to drag unnecessarily, so this matter would have been solved last week already, when we already mentioned that we are not opposing bail as the NPA. So hence I say there are really meetings that needs to happen, but the leadership, we will leave it in the capable hands of the leadership. That's all that you can say.
From News 24, there were inconsistencies in your affidavit, the IO's affidavit. What do you guys have to say about that?
Well, with what the prosecutor saw in the affidavit of the investigating officer, we can safely say as the NPA that affidavit, according to us, was properly commissioned. It had the IO's signature in every page, and on the last page it had his full names and then the signature of the investigating officer. Unless if maybe there's a misunderstanding of how an affidavit should be commissioned. But as to our own view as the NPA, we are sticking to the fact that affidavit was properly commissioned according to us.
Yeah, I guess another question from me would be the fact that the investigating officer, as much as he furnished the magistrate with some of the evidence he's been able to gather, one thing in particular, almost obvious things like getting a timetable to see who wasn't at school, who wasn't supposed to be at school, speaking to the security guard who I would imagine would witness it and give an account of an adult. All of those things seemed not to have been considered by the investigating officer as he came here and did attested that he also believes that the suspect must be let out. But the inconsistencies around that, would you agree that there should be a strengthening of the investigators in terms of their conduct when they come and furnish you guys with the evidence?
Look, as the prosecution, we are satisfied with the manner in which investigations are proceeding. Investigations are still ongoing. Remember that we are not yet at that stage where we can say we are now ready for trial. And most of these issues will be ventilated in the trial court, and then the trial court will then decide on whether or not the state case will take a decision on the strength of the state case. That's a determination that will be made by the trial court.
All right, Sispindi, thank you so much. I was trying to break away from but that's Sispindi Mjonongwane, who's just giving us a sense of how they feel about this. But one particular concerning thing that is an outcome in this particular interview that we just did is the fact that Sispindi says the victim who has passed on, who's also alleged to be one of the Stoterkendes gang, was also facing charges of armed robbery. So when you also look at the fact that Muhammad Mawela also alleged that the knife fell from one of the suspects as they fought, it seems that the state will have to, consider a lot of things when they come to presenting their case in front of the magistrate, and of course maybe at some point decide if it is in their interest to continue with this particular case. But for now, that's the reaction from Sispindile, who's just giving us a sense of how the NPA feels, and they're saying that they're quite satisfied with the judgment, rather the case that the investigating officer has presented for them.